Yes, you read that title right. You're wrong. Probably. Not all of you are wrong, and some of you are wrong in some things, but right in others. Enlisted's campaign merge update was supposed to make the game 10 times better, and in many ways, it actually has. And in some other ways, it can be seen as disappointing and letting the player base down a little bit. And your opinions reflect this. On our 3,000 strong Enlisted Discord server, a poll shows a lot of people like it, but a non-negligible number dislike it. And I can understand your concerns. On YouTube, a poll that I made is close to an exact 3-way tie between it's great, I don't mind, and it's bad. So these all show there is a bunch of debate. But the real reason I'm making this video is due to my last video, which I observed countless negative comments from you guys about it, and equally being asked why I was defending it. Therefore, the best thing that I can do here to help you guys is address your opinions and comments directly, explaining why some of your opinions are just 100% true, but why others are simply not true. Let's start with one of the most popular comments on that video, which I did have a whole discussion with the author of that comment, by the way, and if you want to go look at that, you can. But also, I'm not intending to demonize anybody here. I'm just trying to calmly explain the situation, so I'll blur out the name just in case there was any doubt, and because I don't want this guy to get any stick for his opinions, or for anybody to get any stick for their opinions. I like how the only difference this whole merge has made is to allow people to select what they want to grind. Well, there were many other things, though, that were good for this update, but I think he's referring to the tech tree itself as the only thing that he likes, which I do agree, it's great in literally every single way, apart from the fact it's very confusing for people to read at first when they have no idea what's going on, if they haven't seen any of my past videos or been keeping up with the news, which is why I hope the devs will make it more new player friendly going forwards. Anyway, the people who said that this merge would make games fairer, especially for new players, could not have been more wrong. I like how the community and content creators have just destroyed this once great game. Okay, so some stuff to unpack here. So, the merge is exceptionally fair to new players. I mean, this was literally the entire reason for having a new matchmaking system in the game. If you don't know already, because I know there's lots of people out there who don't, the weapons and vehicles are divided into 5 battle rating tiers, which are almost the same as the tech tree, but not entirely. Some things are moved around slightly. Tiers 1 and 2 are defined as low BR. Tiers 4 and 5 are high BR, and tier 3 is the psychotic mess with a 50% chance of getting into either tier's games. Now I admit, if you didn't know this, it is very confusing. And Enlisted's developers definitely didn't supply you with the tools to figure this out for yourself if you weren't up to date with the news. Even I, on stream, got into high tier games I didn't intend to due to some weird bugs, confusing tiers, whatever. And I even made a video recently about the battle rating, especially the tier 3 conundrum, talking about how bad this battle rating system was in my opinion, how there's no point in using anything other than tier 2 and tier 5 stuff, and how some equipment completely changes in viability when it's moved between tiers 2, 3 and 4. So the point is, yes, this system I don't really think is great in general, but it definitely still helps the new player experience. That is without question. Your games are so much more balanced, both for veterans and new players, because equipment is the same quality in your games. In every previous game before this campaign merge update, you had new players going up with bolt action rifles against Tiger 2s and STG wielding veterans. Now, you can't get that. Literally, because they're only able to go into tier 1 and 2 games as new players against other tier 1 and 2 players. It, by definition, must be more balanced for the new player. That is undebatable. It was one of the biggest issues with the game that everybody used to complain about. It's now fixed. It's more balanced. I'd agree that it's not perfect due to the tier 3 stuff, and there's a bunch of other issues which I complained about in that video, but it's so much better than it was before. That much I can't take away from it. There are also more comments replying to this one. Notice how the content creators that especially push for this merge don't challenge any comments, and when they do, they just say, this merge has fixed a lot of the issues the game had, but they never elaborate. I mean, I literally did in basically all of my previous videos, but here's the short version. It makes the grind much shorter, more freedom to unlock what you want and to not waste time, actually full games and not empty bot lobbies, got rid of some of the soldier perk randomization that's outside of the player's control, made early war equipment actually viable to use in games with tier 1 and 2 matchmaking, and allows new players to not get shredded by late war equipment and leave the game immediately. That's just a few. That's just Gaijin partnership money for you? No. Just know, I get no money from Gaijin. My opinions are entirely my own, hence literally one of the titles of my recent videos. I could spend ages on this precise comments thread, as I literally did myself replying to them because, I mean, it was the most upvoted comment at the time, so if you want to see more of this discussion, then I'd recommend looking for that thread. Imagine being interested in historical accuracy and seeing a tiger in Stalingrad. The ironic thing is that I don't even need to comment because the reply is kind of perfect. But let's pretend that this reply is wrong here. My response to this would be that if you really don't want to see a tiger in Stalingrad, then fair enough. You're right, I don't doubt that things like this annoy many players. I mean, personally for me, it doesn't matter seeing a tiger in the wrong theatre, as long as it kind of makes somewhat sense to be there. For example, I dislike the fact that the British and Commonwealth factions are merged in with the Western Allies, and that Italy is also merged with Germany, which therefore creates situations like the Moroccan squad storming Pacific Islands, the Italians defending Berlin, etc. And I will happily stand with you all viewing this video right now and say this is not a good idea. I mean, because it just looks a bit stupid. I've always, for months, been an advocate of separating them into their own trees. On the other hand, specific tanks and vehicles in areas they weren't really just doesn't bother me, and to most players of the game according to the polls. Remember, this game is historically based, not historically accurate. No game is perfectly so anyway. If the game was historically accurate, the game would simply not be balanced. Japan would be absolutely screwed in every single enlisted match against the Americans if it used historically accurate gear. Fedorov assault rifles, M2 carbines, and FG-42-2s would not be running around as much as they were before this update even existed. There's so many more examples I can give. I mean, did anybody actually ever win a game in the Berlin campaign as the Soviets? Nobody won as Tunisia Axis for ages too. Japan somehow was winning all the time in the Pacific, yet it still was just historically inaccurate, and just created the most horrific one-sided games that just weren't fun for anybody. To be fair though, I would have liked the game to be more historically accurate and keep the same exciting fast-paced gameplay if they could, but once you realise this just isn't possible, the devs had to pick one. And because it's still historically based, I'm happy with the direction that they picked. You can still see the historical things there. If you want a World War II actual perfect simulator, this game was never the option. But even 3 years ago, this was never true for Enlisted. It's not as if the merge itself suddenly ruined perfect historical accuracy. My point is, you guys are right about the game being less historically accurate. You're right, I'm not arguing with you are completely true. And I understand your concerns and even resonate a lot with some of them. But there's surely a reason you guys play this game over Hell Let Loose, Postscriptum, or some other World War II first-person shooter, which were always thought of as being more so in this historical accuracy direction than Enlisted. But for the sake of the balance of the game and sustainability of the game going forwards, they can't make the game perfectly historically accurate. I hope this is understandable. I already miss the campaigns. I do too. I liked the campaign system. It was nice. It made Enlisted unique. I'm sad to see it go just like you. But it was necessary. This is the thing that I don't think players understand, because in fairness, it was never stated explicitly anywhere by the developers why it was needed to be done. So I really just don't blame you. But here's why it was necessary. Enlisted was built on campaigns, adding new content to them, new maps to them, and just adding more of them. But what comes when you add more campaigns? You add 2 new factions, which in itself was not bad, but it's the 2 separate queues that came with it. So more campaigns equals more queues. In fact, 6 of them, once you account for all the different servers. So, we can therefore predict that it would be unsustainable if the player base is not growing as fast as campaigns are being added in order to keep up with it. Now also note that the only real incentive Darkflow, the developers, have to make the whole merge update as a whole would be to sustain the game, so that they can add more campaigns, which are the whole reason Enlisted gains players. There's simply no other incentive for them to add the tech tree, the matchmaking, new soldier progression, etc., unless they just want to please the player base. But there's simply no $$ in this update for them. Therefore, we can safely assume that even they were concerned about adding too many queues and the player base to match it. I mean, you could very easily make the argument that they were very scared of it, because they ignored all the player suggestions, just like mine, to make more queues in the battle rating matchmaking new system, just like the tier 3 thing on its own, or with tier 4, just like we spoke about earlier in this video, or that every tier simply has its own battle rating plus or minus 1 tier, which I've seen suggested by the player base many times. and it honestly would have made a lot more sense in the current system. I don't really understand why they would ignore these battle rating improvements that the player base wanted to see if their number one concern wasn't adding too many queues. And merging the campaigns into factions completely reduces the number of queues, and in many cases will allow the devs to add more campaigns, just like the recently announced Ardennes Offensive, which looks awesome by the way, for no extra queues at all, as the Axis and the Western Allies both will have a chance to queue into it, and I assume a very high chance when it is released just so everybody can play it. There's so many more possibilities the merge gives the developers to add the campaigns that you guys have wanted to see for so long, and hence grow the player base and make them more money as a result, as after all, they are literally a business, even if you and I both miss the campaign system. In the same comment chain, all this control over squads and equipment, zero over location. Angry face. This is almost fully correct. You get so much more control over everything now, it is true. And as a result of the new matchmaking system, you get much less control over maps. But it's not zero. As per my video explaining the current battle rating system, you can make a selection of a group of maps, basically because you can exclude at least one campaign's maps per faction, based on what tiers you choose to play. But yes, of course, it's not possible to pick a specific map. I mean, it never was anyway, but you could still have always picked a set of maps via picking a campaign. In principle, it's the exact same system now, just that each set of maps for each tier contains more maps within it. For example, tier 1 and 2 Axis players get the Tunisia or Moscow sets of maps, but not Berlin. Realistically, to me, it doesn't matter whether I play on winter snowy maps of Eastern Europe or the scorching deserts of North Africa, as long as I can play either of them. And indeed, you will get almost 50-50 of both if you play the game enough. Obviously, if you just play the game like 3 times, you might just get 3 in the same campaign, but that's just unlucky. But you have equally unselected the Berlin maps, so you do get that choice. I mean, honestly, if the fact that you get a coin flip between white or yellow maps really matters that much to you, then yes, of course, this update is not going to be to your liking. And that's fine and understandable, but is the colour of maps really enough to make you quit the game? I'd hope not. This all being said though, to be honest, I do agree with you that I'd much rather be able to pick maps, and I said as much in my video about the battle rating system. So the thing is, I actually agree with you. I hope they do give us a choice going forwards, and I remember hearing that they might consider it in the future, once they become more comfortable that they can add more queues, because by giving an option to select maps, it by default means more queues. Though to be fair, we'd get even more historical inaccuracies if they allowed you to pick any map with your tier equipment, basically showing that this and this comment actually don't work together anymore. You kind of have to pick one, or none, as in the case of what the devs seem to have done. I am personally not a fan of the merge. It makes me not want to use certain squads like the Fedorov MG squad from Moscow because those are battle rating 5, and all my other stuff at most is battle rating 3. Most of my stuff is tier 2 or 3, so I'm never going to use all the tier 3 stuff because of most likely getting put against tier 4 and 5s with mostly tier 2 stuff. Yeah, exactly 100% hit the nail on the head about the issues with the matchmaking. You're completely right. Personally, all my stuff that's tier 3 or even tier 4 is just a write-off. I completely ignore it because it's worthless. This system really does need to change in the future. It really does. Bro, just give us our campaigns back. If I play as Russia, 9 times out of 10 I get put in Stalingrad. Play as Germany, 9 times out of 10 I get put into Normandy. I played half the day and switched up squads, but it seems the maps can't be chosen anymore. I mean, honestly, it just sounds like you're simply unlucky. I mean, I've had a huge range of maps whilst playing. I'm basically always in different campaigns. So yeah, simply unfortunate, because it sounds like he's getting into all the maps he dislikes. I think that the multiple squads of the same type thing need to be done under categories, like how by default you can only bring one vehicle squad per battle. They should add an elite squad subsystem where Flamethrowers and Paratroopers can only have one of these squads brought into battle, meaning you have to choose between bringing one Paratrooper or one Flametrooper into battle. I literally 100% agree with this. I mean, I wouldn't go as far to say limit to one of each, but I see his point. I've said many times that I don't really understand why they even limited squads of all specific types to just 2 per squad loadout, and then they randomly undid it for the merge. I've seen countless comments from players maining high tier especially complaining about paratrooper spam and other things like flamethrowers. Simply put, they should hard limit paratroopers to 1 or 2 per squad loadout. Ideally just 1, because 2 is still very spammable as we learned from the Normandy campaign before the merge, and flamethrowers to maximum 2. No other squad really needs to be limited because they are not game breaking, unlike these two. German army in that case are just too strong with their tanks supporting. Okay, Well, the German army is not too strong. These accusations of any one army being much better than the other are just dumbfounded. The only tiny exceptions right now caused by the merge are the Tiger IIs versus American tanks, which struggle to compete, I do admit, but it's not completely unplayable, though who knows if the Pershing is coming soon to counteract it. This may sound stupid, but I don't care. The progression system and currency actually made me tear up because it reminded me of all the torment and torture I experienced for 9 years playing War Thunder. First and foremost, I am so sorry you feel this way, but Enlisted is an entirely different game to War Thunder. I've seen so many players get War Thunder PTSD from seeing Enlisted's tech tree and immediately think they have to leave the game, but it's so much better than War Thunder's grind. The grind is so quick if you do the maths, quicker than ever before, and without a shadow of a doubt, years quicker than War Thunder's grind. It might look like War Thunder's grind, but it's so much quicker. There's so many more comments I could address, but in the interest of time, I probably can't go through them all. But give the update a chance. If the negatives are too much for you, then okay, fair enough. We're sorry to see you go. Yet even if you do go away from this video planning to uninstall the game, I hope I've at least given you some food for thought.